Nothing major. Was when it comes to darkness.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming out to see. What a beautiful evening tonight. I think last year when we did the walk, it was in September, isn't that right, Gene? Came down Main Street, kind of ran out of light. I'm sorry?
It was a hot night. It was had ice cream.
Had ice cream. That's the only difference between here and last year. We do have punch and cookies and water for anyone, so please help yourself, not before, after the program. I think everybody knows Gene. Tonight's presentation is labeled, I'm sorry about that. And by the way, if you have trouble hearing, please raise your hand and let us know, okay? I don't know why we're getting the feedback, but I'll adjust it there. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Gene's been doing these programs over the last 25 years, quite a number of times. Tonight's presentation is called the Main Street Walk. If you don't know Gene, he's 28 years in the business down here on Main Street with the F.W. Nieberg and Company business, furniture business. And 20 years in the courthouse as a Warren County treasurer, correct?
Yeah.
He is, moved. I think he moved in the area back in 1962, but we owe a big debt to Gene, and for all he's done is to keep the history going in Warrenton and Warren County. Just done a fantastic job, and if you've been to any of his other presentations, you know that it's educational as well as entertaining. I'm going to fix this just a second. Okay. All right. We want to. I'm going to turn it over to Gene, but we want to thank some people for helping out on this project. Janine Davis with the digital presentation. She worked with Gene for weeks on this. Susie Boozy Cruz in her office there that helped locate the photos and the files for the presentation. And as well, Bill Brown right there, who helped with the drone photography, and he's filming tonight for us. So thank you, all three, as well as all the other volunteers here at the museum. So without further ado, and I'll fix this, I'll hand it over to Gene.
Hey, that's a good way to fix it. Well, I have been doing these for about 25 years, so if I'm repetitive, I'll compliment you on your memory and apologize for mine. Okay? Can you hear me? Yes, dear.
Gene, can you move the picture up to the top of the screen?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But then
Because most of the picture
you
is-
asked me if I could do it. I wouldn't even be here if it weren't for Janine. She's the one that does
but
this.
the
So.
lower part of the picture is hidden by the people.
By
in the audience.
people, by human beings.
Yes, yes.
Love them to death, but they're always in the way. It's okay. Okay, this is something new. I have to, thank Jan Sutherland after our last talk and trip down Main Street. She said, why don't we do this digitally and do it in the comfort of the museum? We had done that a long time ago, yeah, but we're slow learners, okay? So we would have done it a very long time ago. Can you go to the next slide? All right. Know where this is? Anybody recognize this house? Anybody? Any hands in the air? No. Bonnie.
Over here. Oh.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. Okay. Next slide. That's where you're at. That house, go back one. Go back to the Wild House. This is the Wild House that's set on the corner of Walton Street and Market Street. As a matter of fact, I think Frank Stearman, Did your mom live in that house at one time?
No.
No? You don't think so? Okay. Who, do you know who lived there?
No, but I was thinking, he pulled out in front of us one time, we almost ran over him.
Okay, okay. All right, well anyhow, this is the Lewis Wild House. Quite a successful person. Of course, they didn't have lawnmowers in those days. He also had a building on Main Street on the north side between Market and East Street, about where I think it's the building that the Warren County Mutual Insurance was in. That was the Wild building originally. Okay, next slide. Ooh, look at there. I like that. Again, this guy didn't have a lawnmower. We didn't have lawnmowers in those days. This is something that showed up. Can you make that a little bigger? This is a group of drawings of different communities in the county. This done by Ira Whithouse, probably in the 60s, late 50s, and this is Warrenton. Right here's the courthouse. I need to change hands because I'm shaky with that left hand. Yeah. All right. That's better. Okay. Here's the courthouse. You'll notice that there are some fellows that have invested in property. Here's Hart and Schoengert. This doesn't show Schoengert's because it's platted 1855. They didn't build their building until 1860. I think we always claim it was 1862 or 3, but I think I saw a newspaper article in the last year that they built that in 62, and the house wasn't actually finished until 1867, which is new information from. All right, and here would be the Marthasville Road, or what we would call South 47. And you notice it doesn't go across the railroad tracks. You had to come down to Troy Road to get out of town. Over here. Yeah. And here's Central Wesleyan Orphanage and College here. The brick, right there, there's a brick yard. They made bricks. A lot of the buildings in Warrenton, the bricks were made there at Truesdale at Ernst Meyer's Brickyard. What isn't on here is at the bottom of the hill. If you'll notice the way this road goes, see it turns. Here's Binkley down here, and it turns, it goes up the hill. So that's pretty, that road bed has been pretty, going out towards Red Hill Bridge. That is a road bed that has been pretty constant. Down this road bed in these days would have been oxen pulling wagons on their way to the Oregon Trail, the jump-off point, and the Santa Fe Trail. The jump-off point was St. Joe, Missouri. One more slide, please. Okay, here's an early picture of Warrenton, taken from what in the 60s we'd call from the High Crossing, which is where the city dump was, and we used to, for sport, we'd go out there and shoot rats with a .22. Ring a bell, Ronnie Cook? Yes, it does. Yeah, okay. So anyhow, we're standing about where Hageman Plumbing is, maybe a little to the south and a little bit to the east. I apologize for this that's going on with this system, but you always okay. Am I in the way? Huh? You've told me that many times, dear. I believe you. Okay. No. Okay. Here is the courthouse, which is a reference point when you're looking for reference points on Main Street in Warrenton. That's one. Here's one. This is the Eisenstein building. This is where H&H Guns is. I call it the Lohman building. And if you see this shape right there with the chimney, sloped roof, the chimney, there'd be one on either end, that's the hotel. It's on the corner of Main and East Street. This was the Middletown Road. It came in, made a dog leg, and then went up and came into town and hit Main Street here. There, I'm sorry, I'm off on it. Just below the hill from where City Hall is now. And City Hall now would be right here, which ironically enough, that was a hardware store and then a blacksmith shop, and then it became the fire station and City Hall. Next photo, please. This is one of Bill Brown's aerials, and they are, this man is really great with this. The photos are so clear. The problem is there's so darn many trees, you can't tell anything. We're sitting here. This is the museum, the Morrissey House, the courthouse. Excuse me. Here's City Hall. Right here is Darrell Hicks's, I call Darrell Hicks's building, where Ray and Hortense Detterman lived. Schoenberg building here. Eisenstein's here. Another thing that you can't see it in this photo very well, but right here, where the theater is, that you can pick that out in the late 1800s, early 1900s by the shape of the front of the building. This is the building I call the Nieberg building, only because I worked there for 28 years. And I don't care what's in it, it's still the store. Okay, next photo. Okay, here's the photo that is out on the easel in the lobby. This is a photo that I had not seen before about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Susie showed it to me, and I was blown away, the clarity of it. It has to be an aerial photo, may have been taken at the same time as the next photo that we're going to show you. This I think was in the, well, that will preclude what I just said. I think looking at the cars and the buildings that are there, there wasn't a lot of change in the 30s, 40s, 50s, because Warrenton didn't grow in those periods. It hit a high in 1880 of just under 10,000 people, and then it started going down till I think it was 1960. It was in 7,500 for the county I'm talking about, and then it started coming back up. So it had a long, slow decline period in population. We think maybe that's not because it wasn't a busy place to live. It's because in those days people were still going west. You know, if they hadn't had the Rocky Mountains, we'd all be on the West Coast. I heard a guy say one time that the reason Denver's so big was because the guys in the wagons got there and looked and said, this far enough. You know? But anyhow, they were traveling west. Here is courthouse. This is the Yoakum building. This is another way that I date photos. This building and the Nieberg building were both built in 1912. So if these buildings are in it, it's after 1913. If they're not in it, it's before that time. Excuse me. Excuse me. The Leonard building. The Leonard building would be next to the furniture store right there.
Okay.
Dr. Leonard's building, which is, we know most recently is Brewski's. Yeah. Dr. Leonard, a dentist. Dentists seem to have done well in life. When Dr. Yoakum died, he had properties, and I don't know, it's not described where, but they said he owned about half of the properties in commercial properties in Warrenton. So I've got another example of that too later on. You'll notice back here, no development at all. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is an aerial by the Curtis Airplane Company taken in 1940. If we look for landmarks, there's the courthouse, there's Schoenberg or Wright Building. Thank you. Okay, courthouse. Okay, this 1940. So here's another building, the jail that was built in 1932. And Schoenberg's had done their addition by that time. I think that was done in about 1880, I think. Here is, go up a little more. Right there's the Schoenberg house. Can you go back to the other way, make it smaller? There you go. You'll notice not much development on either side, but if you look at these houses up Walton Street, they had a mini farm. There will be chicken houses in here. There will be gardens. If you get really to it, I'm sure there's some cattle in here. Same way on this side towards the railroad tracks. Here is the school. Right here, we'll have a good picture of that later on. Of course, the railroad tracks. This doesn't quite go up to the corner of Marthasville or Highway 47. Next photograph, please. Okay. What in the world's that? Anybody recognize anything? Galloway? Thank you, Bill. Yeah. You got it. Baseball diamond. This was where the county fair was held. This would be Cool Avenue. This would be Vauchel. This would be Highway 47 South. Excuse me. This would be about 1952 or 3. I'm a little rusty. The county fair was originally out where 911 is, back in the 1800s, the middle to late 1800s is where the county fair was, and then it was discontinued, and it didn't start again until, I think it was either 52 or 54. We have the original program here someplace, because I brought it, of their first county fair, and I think it's 52. But anyhow, we've got here pretty small midway, and pretty small area for livestock. JC's, John Lichtenmeyer and I had an awful good time selling soda pop right there. I remember Glenn Boland came up and he'd been drinking a little bit, and he said, "Hey, John, you know what I know like about your wife?" John said, "No, what, Glenn?" He said, "Not a damn thing." Okay, let's do the aerial on that. The next one is a Bill Brown photo, and you can see the baseball diamond. This is the back of the lot at Schoenberg's. There's a school on Cool Avenue, and as you can tell, we're more developed, more trees around. Okay, let's do another one.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, 1864, the English Methodist Seminary and the German Methodist Seminary at Quincy, Illinois. The English Methodists decided that they were no longer going to participate in a school there. They pulled all of their education back to Borough, Ohio. And the German Methodist Church says, no, we have to go ahead. And as a matter of fact, 1864, you realize it's deep into the Civil War. It generated a huge number of orphans, and so they were looking for a place to complete the mission that they feel like their God told them to help others. They decided they were going to open an orphanage. They came to Warrenton, bought 940 acres from Colonel Truesdale, who was the engineer that laid out the right-of-way for the North Missouri, St. Louis to Kansas City Railroad. In the process, I assume he must have purchased a little ground along the way. And so anyhow, this house that they're in, this was the Truesdale Mansion. I didn't have time, or didn't take the time. Creed, I think, was his name, but that is the original superintendent of the orphans home. And then, of course, if you're going to have an orphans home, you have to educate these children. So they had an academy too. They stayed together until, I think it was 1870 something, and then the Central Wesleyan College separated from the orphanage. They were still on the same grounds, but their administration and their goals had become so separate that the orphanage was operated under one group and the college under another board of directors. So these are the original orphans that probably were gathered here after they came down here. I don't think they had an orphanage in Quincy. That was their new endeavor, their new enterprise was this orphanage. And then, of course, the education of those orphans. Next picture. Here is a picture of the front of the orphans' home. It's on a postcard. These gates here, right here, are in the city park. Yeah, down on Morgan Street. Bill Tapmeyer saved them in his barn, and we, a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, put those up in the park around the old cemetery there.
What Painter's sisters were they?
Well, you know, I don't know, because it's, let's go to the other side of that, Janine. Okay. You'll notice it. Go back one. That's all right. Yeah. Okay, it started out as Painter sisters. Somebody said, no, it isn't, because this is Grace Painter and this is Ruby Heislip. So,
Well, Ruby, but Grace, my cousin.
Grace is your cousin? Say hello. Yeah, okay. Was she a resident at the orphan's home?
No.
Okay.
Could have been.
No, well, it could have been the Grace Painter, you know, these postcards that they had, and people put these together. This came out of a album of somebody's, you can tell by that black.
I didn't have any
Yeah,
other
so,
name of Ruby.
yeah. Okay, well, they might have just been friends, who knows, they might have
Yeah.
drank and danced together, who knows? Okay, this is approximately where, well, there's one orphan's home building remaining, maybe a couple. Are any of the cottages lit? No, the cottages are all gone. There's a big two-story building behind the dollar store. That was the power plant, wash house for the orphanage. And so that's the only building remaining. This would have been in front of that, probably about where the parking lot is, where the dollar store is. Now, this was not just any kind of an operation either, because these kids had to work to support themselves. They grew their own food, 940 acres here. They would drive their cattle out to the pastures, which is, anybody know where the radio station is on North 47? Okay, that's orphan's home property. and everything in between. Yeah, okay. So they had and if you go to the middle school up there, the old high school track that was back there, that was part of the orphans' home. As a matter of fact, that field down there where they played football and track, that was an airport at one time. We've got a picture someplace, and it's a movie, of Bill Frick landing his Piper Cub on that field behind the where that was. Okay, here are some of the citizens of the orphans' home. This little guy's got an attitude. I love that. Yeah. I think we're getting ready to go to school, go to class here. This orphans' home produced some solid citizens. Many of the people that are here today are descendants of these people. Earl Comer was an orphan here, and he became mayor of Warrenton at one time. You know any more of those orphans that are around?
No, I've heard talk about
Yeah.
different
Okay.
ones that he knew
All right.
real well.
Very good.
Because he lived in Cruisdale
Yeah.
and they crossed property.
Okay, yeah, I'm interested in that. I've never had a story of conflict, but I'm sure there had to be conflict between the orphans and the residents. I mean, it just could not be. We're talking about estrogen and hormones, testosterone, and all those hazardous chemicals that we own. And I'm sure there had to be some conflicts and, of course, some friendships that were developed.
He could have told you.
Yeah, and he would have, bless his heart. Yeah, okay, one more. This is the orphans that's all right, in a different phase. It wasn't all work. This is Paul Nehus. Anybody remember Calvin Nehus? All right, this is Calvin Nehus' uncle. He retired, I think it was in 1918 from farming, lived another 30 years, and he volunteered at the orphans' home. He evidently could train a mule. There's a mule colt. And he could keep little children entertained. He was also the superintendent of the Sunday school at the Methodist Church. He was president of the board of the Methodist Church at one time or another. When I first looked at this picture, I said, oh my gosh, there's a set of twins. See them?
Yeah.
Well, let's start looking at these other haircuts. I'm not going with the twin story. Okay? Yeah. All right. Here's a little fella that doesn't have shoes. These are all future, productive, God-fearing, hell-raising citizens that went on to make the area and the country as a whole what it is. They were given a chance in life by the Methodist Church and with this orphanage here. Okay. Here is Central Wesleyan College. This is an artist rendering, so it's just there to show you that they had buildings. This is some of their promotional literature. Next one. This is the Eisenmeyer Hall. I think that was the college building where most of the classes were. It stood where on the corner of Highway 47 and Main Street. Substantial building. Central Wesleyan College had a pretty good endowment. Matter of fact, they had an 80-year run in this community. And we forget the contribution they made to the society and the culture of this community. Music, their twin goals were to educate teachers and pastors. That was their goal, was to do teachers and pastors. They also had, they also had agricultural college. They had a military college that had their cadets that they trained. This is promotional literature for the Central Wesleyan College. This half is in English. This half is in German. Yes, because they were very proud. As a matter of fact, I've got one of their flyers. It says that financial classes are taught in the language of commerce, German. So now this went on until the First World War. It became unpopular to be a German during the First World War. So they dropped those German classes. Well, they went on into the 30s with it. But a lot of the churches around here, almost all the evangelical and reformed, which were called at that time Evangelishers, had German sermons. And a lot of the Methodists did too. I don't know. Hey, Alvin, when did they quit doing German in Smith Creek? Do you know?
Invited me.
Huh? Huh?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
I remember about 2 services that were German.
Do you?
Special Thanksgiving for-
Yeah, well, okay, I go to church at Holstein, the home of the Hardheads, and they were still doing German sermons once a month into the late 40s. It was very risky to do, and if you wanted any outsiders to join your church, because being German wasn't popular in 1914, 15, 16, 17. Got even